Get out, you filthy dog. Crawl back to the gutter.
You can't do this. Not tonight.
Or what? What are you gonna do? Cry? Beg? That's all your kind ever does.
I'll pay next week. I swear.
Pay with what? You can't cover 2 months' rent. You're broke. Dead broke. You eat from dollar stores and still can't make it.
A landlord throwing a black single mother out of her apartment. 3 neighbors behind cracked doors. Not one stepped forward.
That's your whole life right there. Get your black hide off my block. You'll never own a thing.
But the day she came back, 3 years later, he would regret every single word. The snow started falling on Maple Street around 6 in the evening. Soft flakes drifted past streetlights wrapped in garland, past porches lined with blinking lights, past the second-floor apartment where Maya Crawford knelt beside a 3-foot Christmas tree with her daughter. Lily was 6. She had her mother's wide brown eyes and a gap where her 2 front teeth used to be. She pressed a fork into a lump of bread dough, leaving tiny grooves, then dunked it in watered-down red food coloring. "Mama, this one's for your side of the bed, so you see it first thing when you wake up." Maya kissed the top of her head. The apartment smelled like salt dough and cinnamon sticks. The radiator clicked and hummed. Their little tree tilted under pipe cleaner angels and cereal box stars wrapped in foil. None of it cost more than $1. All of it mattered. Then the banging started. 3 knocks, hard, the kind that crack against a door frame like a judge's gavel. Maya wiped her hands and looked through the peephole. Her stomach dropped. Gerald Whitmore filled the hallway in a camel hair overcoat. Behind him, a sheriff's deputy stood with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on a spot above Maya's doorframe, anywhere but at her. She opened the door halfway. "Ms. Crawford," Gerald said her name the way a clerk stamps overdue on a bill. "2 months behind, order signed, you vacate tonight." "Mr. Whitmore." Maya kept her voice low. She could feel Lily watching from the kitchen table, bread dough still stuck to her fingers. "It's Christmas Eve. 1 week, that's all I'm asking." 1 week. He repeated it like she'd told a joke. "I gave your neighbor Mrs. Patterson 1 week last March. She's still in a shelter on 4th Street. He held out the document. "I don't do weeks." The deputy stepped forward. "Ma'am, the order's valid. You have until 9 p.m. Maya took the paper. "Order of eviction." The words sat in bold across the top like a headline about someone else's life. Gerald checked his watch. "Clock's running." He gave her 2 black garbage bags, industrial size. The deputy set them inside the door without stepping in, like he was leaving something at a crime scene. Maya packed in silence. Her hands moved on autopilot. Lily's clothes first. The winter coat with the broken zipper, the 3 shirts that still fit, the pajamas with the faded stars, the stuffed rabbit with the missing ear, the coloring books, the bread dough heart still tacky with red dye. She wrapped it in a dish towel so it wouldn't break. Her own things went in next. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 work shirts, a few dishes, the framed photo of her mother standing outside a church in Alabama, squinting into the sun. A Bible with a cracked spine that still smelled like her grandmother's kitchen. Everything she owned fit in 2 bags with room to spare. 29 years of living, and the bags weren't even full. She left the tree standing, left the pipe cleaner angels hanging, left the pot of cinnamon water still warming on the stove. Gerald waited by the stairwell, thumbs working across his phone screen. He didn't look up when Maya carried the bags past him, didn't move to let her pass. She turned sideways to squeeze through the gap between his shoulder and the railing. Lily held the back of Maya's coat with both fists, face pressed into the fabric. Outside, the snow had thickened. Maple Street was quiet. Music drifted from a house at the end of the block. "Oh, holy night." The tenor hit the high note just as Maya set the bags on the sidewalk. Gerald locked the door, dropped the key in his pocket, started toward his black SUV. Then he stopped. "Word of advice, Miss Crawford." His breath made small white clouds. "Stop dreaming. You'll never own a thing in your life. Not a house, not a business, not even a room your daughter can keep. He climbed in. The engine purred. The taillights shrank and vanished around the corner. Maya stood on the sidewalk with 2 garbage bags, a bread dough heart wrapped in a dish towel, and a 6-year-old who had stopped asking questions. Lily reached up and took her mother's hand. They started walking. Maya didn't know where. She just knew that standing still was the one thing she couldn't afford. They walked 14 blocks through the snow before Maya found the shelter. It was a converted church on Garrison Avenue. Brick walls, narrow windows, a hand-painted sign that read, Hope House Women's Shelter. The front steps were salted but still slick. Maya carried both bags in one arm and held Lily against her hip with the other. Inside, a woman behind a folding table looked up from a clipboard. Her name tag said, Diane. She had reading glasses on a chain and tired eyes that had seen this scene 100 times. How old is the child? 6. We have 1 room left, shared. Another family's already in it. Diane pulled a key from a drawer. Breakfast is at 7, lights out at 10, no exceptions. The room was the size of a walk-in closet. 2 cots, a small lamp with no shade. A woman named Trish and her teenage son sat on the far cot, eating crackers from a sleeve. Trish nodded at Maya but didn't speak. Her son had headphones in and stared at the wall. Maya laid Lily on the cot closest to the door. She pulled out the stuffed rabbit and tucked it under Lily's arm. Then she opened the second garbage bag and found the bread dough heart. She set it on the windowsill where Lily would see it in the morning. Mama, is this our house now? Just for a little while, baby. Lily closed her eyes. She was asleep within minutes. Children do that. They trust the world to hold them even when the world has done nothing to earn it. Maya sat on the edge of the cot and listened to the building settle. Somewhere down the hall, a woman was crying. Somewhere outside, church bells rang. Midnight, Christmas Day. She didn't cry. She wanted to, but if she started, she wasn't sure she could stop. The next morning, Lily opened a coloring book Maya had grabbed during the packing. It was the only gift. Lily colored for 2 hours straight, quiet and careful, staying inside the lines. Maya spent the week applying for jobs. Fast food, retail, cleaning, hotel front desk, warehouse. She filled out 32 applications in 7 days. She got 4 callbacks. 3 of them said no after the interview. The 4th never called back. On the 9th day, she found a listing taped to the shelter's bulletin board. Night shift cleaning crew. A commercial real estate office downtown. 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. $7 above minimum wage. No experience required. She called the number. Started the following Monday. The office belonged to a firm called Pennington Partners. They managed shopping plazas, apartment complexes, mixed-use developments. The brokers left by 7 in the evening. Maya arrived at 11 to vacuum their floors, empty their trash, and wipe down their conference tables. The first week she cleaned and went home. The second week she started noticing things. Lease agreements left open on desks. Property valuations stapled to folders. Investment memos with numbers circled in red. Spreadsheets showing what a building cost, what it earned, and how fast the owner paid it off. She didn't understand all of it. Not the legal language. Not the depreciation tables, not the formulas for cap rates and cash-on-cash returns. But she understood enough to know that these people made money by owning things, not by working harder, not by putting in more hours, not by showing up at 11 p.m. to scrub someone else's floors, by owning property, by owning the building she was cleaning. That realization hit her one night like a door swinging open in a dark hallway. She started reading the documents after she finished cleaning. Not stealing them, just reading. She'd sit at the conference table at 4 in the morning with a mop leaning against the wall and a lease agreement spread out in front of her. She kept a notebook in her back pocket and wrote down every term she didn't recognize. She looked them up on the shelter's shared computer the next day. One night she found a sticky note on a broker's desk. Blue ink, capital letters. Buy low, renovate, flip, repeat. 6 words. She read them 3 times. She started taking the discarded reports home, the ones in the recycling bins, quarterly earnings summaries, market analyses for neighborhoods she'd never heard of, tax lien auction schedules. Every night after Lily fell asleep on the shelter cot, Maya sat under the hallway light and read. She didn't have a desk. She used a clipboard on her knees. She didn't have a degree. She didn't have savings. She didn't have a car. But she had 14 hours a day when Lily was at the shelter's daycare program, and she had a building full of blueprints for how money actually worked. One night, Trish watched her reading from across the room. "What are you studying?"
How to buy a house, Maya said.
Trish laughed. Not mean, just surprised. "Girl, we can't even rent one." Maya didn't answer. She turned the page and kept reading. Something was forming. Not a plan yet, not even an idea. Just a feeling, sharp and stubborn, that the man who threw her into the snow was wrong. She would own something. She didn't know what. She didn't know when. But the quiet voice in her chest said it was possible, and she decided to believe it. Maya saved every dollar she could touch. She stopped buying coffee, stopped taking the bus when she could walk. She packed Lily's lunches from the shelter's pantry donations and ate whatever was left over. Her bank account was a prepaid card she loaded at the corner store every Friday night. After rent for the single room she'd moved into, a studio above a laundromat on 8th Street, she had about $90 a week. She put 60 of it away. 4 months in, she had saved $2,300. It wasn't enough for anything. It was enough for what came next. She found the flyer on the shelter's bulletin board, the same one that had led her to the cleaning job. Free real estate licensing course, community college extension program, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 12 weeks, open to all. Maya signed up the same day. The class met in a basement room at Garfield Community College. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs, a whiteboard with a crack running down the middle. Most of the students were career changers in their 40s, former retail workers, a laid-off mechanic, a guy who'd just gotten out of the military. Maya was the youngest by a decade. She was also the only one who showed up every single session. The instructor was a woman named Eleanor Price, 67 years old, silver hair pulled back in a bun. She wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and spoke in a voice that was calm the way deep water is calm. Still on the surface, powerful underneath. Eleanor had spent 30 years buying and selling commercial real estate in the city. She'd retired at 62 with a portfolio of 14 properties. Now she volunteered 2 nights a week because, as she told the class on the first day, "Somebody showed me the door when I was broke, and I've been holding it open ever since." Maya sat in the front row. She took notes in a spiral notebook she'd bought for $1. She asked questions after class. She stayed late. She came early. By the 3rd week, Eleanor noticed. "You're not here for a license," Eleanor said one evening, leaning against the whiteboard after everyone else had left. "You're here for a plan." Maya told her the truth. The eviction, the shelter, the cleaning job, the documents she'd been reading at 4 in the morning. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When Maya finished, Eleanor pulled a chair next to hers and sat down. "Tax liens," she said. "That's where you start. When a property owner doesn't pay their taxes, the county puts a lien on the building. They auction those liens. You buy the lien, you earn interest. If the owner doesn't pay up, you get the property. Most people at those auctions are investors with 6 figures. But every now and then, a property comes up that nobody wants. Too damaged, too small, too ugly. That's your door." Maya wrote it all down. Over the next 8 weeks, Eleanor taught her things the course didn't cover. How to read a title search, how to estimate renovation costs, how to negotiate with contractors, how to spot a building that looked worthless but sat on valuable land. Maya passed the licensing exam on the first try. Score, 92. Eleanor shook her hand and said, "Now the real education starts." The first auction was at the county courthouse on a Tuesday morning. Maya wore the only blazer she owned, a thrift store find with a loose button on the left cuff. She sat in the back row with a folder of research and her prepaid card balance memorized to the cent. 12 properties went up. The first 11 drew bids from men in suits, developers, flippers, fund managers. The numbers climbed past what Maya could imagine. Then came Lot 13. A condemned duplex on Ridgeway Avenue, boarded windows, collapsed porch. The county listing described it as uninhabitable. The auctioneer read the description and two people in the front row laughed. Starting bid, $5,000. Nobody raised a paddle. $5,000? Anyone? Maya raised hers. Sold! $5,000 to the woman in the back. She paid with a cashier's check made out from the $2,300 she'd saved, plus $3,000 Eleanor had loaned her. Pay me back when you flip your first house, Eleanor had said. Not a day before. The duplex was worse than the listing described. Mold in the walls, plumbing stripped by scrappers, a hole in the second-floor bathroom where someone had ripped out the tub. The backyard was chest-high weeds and broken glass. Maya started the renovation on a Saturday. She watched YouTube tutorials at night and worked on the building during the day. She learned to patch drywall, replace outlets, lay vinyl flooring. A retired plumber from the church down the street helped her with the pipes in exchange for Maya cleaning his office on weekends. It took her 4 months. She did most of it herself. And from the duplex's back porch, if she stood on her toes, she could see Maple Street. She could see Gerald Whitmore's block. She didn't look away. Maya sold the Ridgeway duplex for $43,000. She'd bought it for $5,000. Put another $6,000 into the renovation. Materials, permits, the plumber's pipework. Total investment, $11,000. Profit, $32,000. More money than she'd earned in the previous 2 years combined. She sat in her car outside the title office after the closing and held the check with both hands. She didn't move for a long time. Then she drove to Eleanor's house, walked up the front steps, and handed her a check for $3,000 plus $400 in interest. Eleanor looked at the check, looked at Maya, folded her arms. "Interest," Eleanor said. "I didn't ask for interest." "I know." Eleanor put the check in her pocket and handed Maya a cup of coffee. They sat on the porch for an hour, and Eleanor laid out the next phase. 1 flip proves you can do it. 2 proves it wasn't luck. 5 proves you're in business. Maya reinvested everything. She bought 2 more distressed properties at the next county auction, a fire-damaged row house on Clement Street and a foreclosed bungalow near the rail yard. She hired a small crew this time, 2 guys from the church renovation network Eleanor had connected her to. She paid them fairly and fed them lunch every day. They worked fast. Both properties sold within 6 weeks of completion. Combined profit, $51,000. Maya filed the paperwork for Crawford Property Group on a Wednesday afternoon. The filing cost $75. She paid it in cash at the county clerk's window. Her first hire was a part-time assistant named Dawn, a single mother she'd met at Hope House Shelter. Dawn answered phones, filed permits, and kept the books in a spreadsheet on a second-hand laptop. The company grew the way a vine grows, slowly at first, then everywhere at once. Within a year, Maya had flipped 9 properties. But somewhere around the 6th flip, something changed. She walked through a finished house on Delaney Street. New floors, fresh paint, a kitchen that smelled like sawdust and potential. And a woman showed up for the open house with 2 kids and a look Maya recognized. That look. The one that says, "I need this to work." Maya didn't sell that house. She rented it, below market rate. That was the shift. She stopped thinking like a flipper and started thinking like an owner. Rental income. Steady monthly cash flow. She learned the difference between flipping for profit and holding for wealth. Flipping was fast money. Holding was freedom. She chose freedom. By the 14th month, she held 6 rental properties and was still flipping on the side to fund new acquisitions. Her spreadsheet, the one Dawn kept on the second-hand laptop, showed positive cash flow for the first time. Not a lot, but enough that Maya stopped waking up at 3 a.m. doing math in her head. She also developed a reputation. Tenants talked. Word spread the way it does in neighborhoods where people sit on stoops and trade notes about who treats them right and who doesn't. In a world where landlords like Gerald Whitmore raised rents without warning, ignored leaking roofs, and served eviction notices the way other people served dinner invitations, Maya Crawford was different. She fixed things. She kept rents reasonable. She answered her phone. When a pipe burst at 2 in the morning in her Clement Street building, she drove there herself with a wrench and a flashlight. A woman named Patrice, who rented one of Maya's first units, told a reporter from the neighborhood paper, "She treats us like people. Around here, that's rare enough to make the news." It did make the news. A small article in the East Side Gazette. Local woman builds rental company from scratch. Maya cut it out and pinned it to her office wall, which was still just a corner of her studio apartment, separated from Lily's bed by a bookshelf. 18 months after the eviction, Maya owned 15 properties. Her net rental income covered all her bills, Lily's new school, Dawn's salary, and the lease on a small office on Baker Street. Then she turned her attention to Maple Street. She'd driven past Gerald's block dozens of times. She knew every building on it. She knew which ones had code violations. She knew which tenants were unhappy. She knew Gerald was over-leveraged. Too many loans, too little maintenance, too much ego. The first property she bought on his block was a foreclosed triplex, 2 doors from Gerald's main building. The previous owner had walked away from the mortgage. The bank sold it at auction. Maya's company was the only bidder. The deed listed the buyer as Crawford Property Group. Gerald never read it. He didn't pay attention to names on deeds. He paid attention to rent checks, and lately, fewer of them were coming. Maya renovated the triplex in 8 weeks. New plumbing, fresh paint, working heat. She listed the units at rents 15% below Gerald's rates for comparable apartments. All 3 units filled within a month. 2 of the tenants came from Gerald's building. He didn't notice. Not yet. Lily was 8 now. She had her own bedroom for the first time in her life. A desk, a lamp with a shade. She taped the bread dough heart, now dried and cracked, the red fading to pink, above her bed. It had traveled from the apartment on Maple Street to the shelter on Garrison Avenue to the studio above the laundromat to this room. Maya looked at it every morning. It reminded her where she'd been, and it reminded her where she was going. She had 22 properties now. 6 of them were on Gerald Whitmore's block. He still didn't know her name. Maya didn't rush. She moved like water finding cracks in a wall, patient, quiet, and impossible to stop once the pressure built. Over the next 6 months, she acquired 3 more buildings on Gerald's block, each time through a different channel. One through a tax lien auction, one from a landlord who was retiring and wanted a clean exit, one from a bank foreclosure where Gerald himself had been outbid without knowing who was on the other side. That made 6 buildings out of 9 on the block. Maya owned 2/3 of Maple Street. Gerald's world was shrinking, and he didn't understand why. His tenants were leaving. Not all at once, that would have been obvious. One family at a time. A couple in 4B moved out in March. A single father in 2A left in April. The woman in 3C, the one who'd complained about the broken radiator for 2 winters straight, was gone by May. They all moved to the same place, Crawford Property Group's buildings, 2 doors down, across the street, around the corner, better units, lower rent, a landlord who fixed things. Gerald's vacancy rate climbed from 5% to 30% in 8 months. His rental income dropped. His mortgage payments didn't. Then, the city showed up. A building inspector named Wallace, clipboard, hard hat, no expression, walked through Gerald's flagship property on Maple Street. The building Maya had been evicted from. He spent 3 hours inside. He found 18 code violations, faulty wiring on the 2nd floor, a gas leak in the basement, mold in 4 apartments, exit signs that hadn't worked since the previous administration. Gerald got the letter on a Thursday. $64,000 in fines, 60 days to remediate or face condemnation proceedings. He called his lawyer. His lawyer said pay the fines and fix the building. Gerald called his bank. His bank said his credit line was maxed. Gerald called his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law said he'd already lent him $40,000 last year and hadn't seen a dime back. Gerald decided to sell. He told himself it was strategy. Trim the fat. Unload the weak assets. Focus on the flagship. That's what smart investors do. That's what he'd heard them say at the golf club back when they still took his calls. He listed 2 properties first, the ones in the worst shape. He priced them below market, hoping for a quick close. 3 offers came in within a week. The highest bidder on both properties, Crawford Property Group. Gerald's real estate agent, a man named Phil Deacon, handled the paperwork. Gerald never attended the closings. He signed remotely from his kitchen table in a bathrobe, coffee getting cold, pen scratching across FedEx documents. He took the wire transfers and put them toward his debts. The money disappeared faster than it arrived. He mentioned the buyer's name once, over the phone with Phil. Crawford Property Group. Who are these people? Investment firm, Phil said. Local. They've been buying up a lot of the east side. Solid reputation. Good for them. Gerald said it the way a man says, "I'm fine," when he's not. Phil paused. You know, Gerald, their buildings on your block, they're filling up fast. I drove past last week, new paint, new signage, tenants moving in. I said, good for them. Gerald hung up. He didn't ask any more questions. Asking questions meant hearing answers. And the answers, he was starting to suspect, wouldn't make him feel better. His flagship building, the one with the 18 violations, was bleeding money. The fines were accruing interest. 2 more tenants left. The boiler failed in November, and the repair estimate came in at $9,000. Gerald didn't have it. He sat in his office on a Tuesday night, looking at a spreadsheet that used to make him feel powerful. Every column was red. Every row was a building he was losing grip on. He owned 3 properties on Maple Street now, down from 9 at his peak. The block he'd controlled for 20 years was slipping through his fingers, and he couldn't figure out who was pulling. A real estate agent he knew from the golf club leaned across a table at a diner and told him what everyone in the neighborhood already knew. Some woman's buying up your whole block, Gerald. Building by building. Gerald set his coffee down. Who? Don't know her name. Company's called Crawford something. She's good. Tenants love her. Gerald laughed. It was the kind of laugh that covers fear. Let her try. I've been on that block 20 years. She'll run out of money before I run out of patience. But patience doesn't pay mortgages, and Gerald's were coming due. He went home that night and poured himself a whiskey. He sat in the living room of the house his father had left him, the one asset nobody could take, and looked at the framed photo on the mantel. His father shaking hands with the mayor, 1989. The year he'd bought the first building on Maple Street. Gerald had grown up believing that block was his birthright, that it would always be there, that the rent checks would always come. He finished the whiskey and poured another. Maya sat in her Baker Street office that same evening, reviewing the block map she'd pinned to the wall. 9 buildings, 6 blue pins, hers, 3 red pins, Gerald's. She picked up a blue pin from the cup on her desk and held it between her fingers. 3 more to go. The letter from First National Bank arrived on a Monday in January. Gerald opened it standing in his kitchen, coffee going cold on the counter. The words were clean and corporate and final. Notice of default. Foreclosure proceedings will commence in 90 days. The building in question was 412 Maple Street, his flagship. The one he'd bought 22 years ago with a loan from his father. The one where he'd collected rent from 36 tenants at his peak. The one where, 3 Christmases ago, he'd evicted a woman and her daughter into the snow. Now it had 11 tenants, 4 open violations, a boiler that hadn't worked since November, and a mortgage 3 months past due. Gerald called every contact he had. His accountant said consolidate. His lawyer said negotiate. His brother-in-law said, don't call me again. His golf club friends stopped returning his messages one by one, the way lights go off in a building being abandoned. He had one option left: sell everything. All 3 remaining properties, package deal, cut his losses and walk away with whatever the market would give him. He called Phil Deacon. List them, all 3, bundle price. I want this done in 30 days. Phil listed the package at $1.2 million. Market value was probably closer to 1.5, but Gerald didn't have the luxury of patience anymore. That word again, patience. The thing he'd told himself he had more of than anyone. The listing went live on a Tuesday. By Thursday, 4 inquiries came in. By Friday, one firm had submitted a formal offer. Crawford Property Group, $1.15 million. Cash, 30-day close. Phil called Gerald. "You've got a strong offer. Cash buyer. They want all three. No contingencies." "Crawford," Gerald said. The name sounded familiar. He couldn't place it. "They bought 2 of my buildings last year." "They did. Clean transactions both times. No issues." Gerald leaned back in his chair. He looked out the window at Maple Street, the block he'd built, the block that was supposed to be his legacy. 6 of the 9 buildings already belonged to someone else. Now the last 3 would follow. "Take the deal," he said. The closing was scheduled for February 15th at the law offices of Harmon Blaine & Associates, a conference room on the 14th floor downtown. Gerald's lawyer would be there, the buyer's representative would be there, Phil would be there, signatures, wire transfer, done. Gerald picked out a suit, navy blue, the one he wore to closings when he was buying, not selling. He told himself it was just business. Properties come and go, markets shift. He'd rebuild somewhere else. He almost believed it. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror that night and practiced saying it. It's just business. The mirror didn't look convinced either. The night before the closing, Maya sat in her office on Baker Street. The block map on the wall had 6 blue pins and 3 red pins. After tomorrow, all 9 would be blue. She opened her desk drawer and took out 2 things, a manila folder with the closing documents and a small plastic bag. Inside the bag was a piece of bread dough shaped like a heart, dried and cracked. The red food coloring had faded to a pale pink. One edge had chipped during the move from the laundromat apartment. It was 9 years old in bread dough years. Fragile, almost weightless. Lily had made it on Christmas Eve, the last thing she'd made before the banging started on the door. Maya put it in her briefcase next to the closing documents. Then she drove to Maple Street. She parked across from 412, Gerald's building, her old building. She turned off the engine and sat in the dark. Snow was falling, light snow, the kind that doesn't stick but makes everything look softer. The street light on the corner still had the same garland from 3 years ago, or maybe new garland in the same pattern. Either way, it looked the same. She looked at the sidewalk where she'd stood with 2 garbage bags. The spot where Lily had reached up and taken her hand. The spot where she'd started walking without knowing where she was going. Tomorrow, she would walk into a conference room and sign her name 9 times, and every building on this block would belong to her. She sat there for a long time. The snow kept falling. She didn't turn the engine back on. She didn't need to go anywhere. She was already where she needed to be. The conference room at Harmon Blaine & Associates had floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls. 14th floor. You could see the river from one side and the east side skyline from the other. The table was long and polished and reflected the overhead lights like still water. Gerald arrived at 9:45, 15 minutes early. He wore the navy suit. He carried a leather portfolio he'd bought in better days. Italian, monogrammed. The kind of thing a man buys when he wants the world to know he's winning. He set it on the table and sat at the far end, facing the door. Phil Deacon sat to his left. Gerald's lawyer, a man named Trent Sawyer, sat to his right. They made small talk about the market. Gerald laughed at something that wasn't funny. The room smelled like fresh coffee and printer toner. At 10 o'clock sharp, the door opened. Maya walked in. She wore a charcoal blazer over a white blouse. Her hair was pulled back. She carried a leather briefcase, not expensive but clean. She moved the way people move when they know exactly where they are and exactly why they're there. Gerald looked up. His eyes passed over her the way they'd pass over a receptionist. He glanced at Phil, expecting someone else to walk in behind her. Nobody did. Maya set her briefcase on the table. She opened it, removed a folder, and placed a business card on the polished surface. She slid it across to Gerald with 2 fingers. He picked it up. Maya Crawford, founder and CEO, Crawford Property Group. He read it twice. The first time, the name didn't register. The second time, something shifted behind his eyes. A flicker. Not recognition yet. More like the feeling you get when you hear a sound in an empty house and can't identify it.
Ms. Crawford,
Phil said, standing. Gerald Whitmore. Gerald, this is the principal of Crawford Property Group. Gerald extended his hand automatically. Maya shook it. Her grip was firm. His was not. Have we met? Gerald asked. His voice was casual. His eyes were not. Maya sat down across from him. She folded her hands on the table. We have, Mr. Whitmore. 3 years ago, Christmas Eve, second-floor apartment at 412 Maple Street. The room went quiet. Gerald's hand, still resting on the business card, went still. Phil looked between them. Trent Sawyer set his pen down. You gave me 2 garbage bags and told me to vacate by 9 p.m., Maya said. Her voice was level. No heat, no tremor, just fact. You told me I'd never own a thing in my life. Not a house, not a business, not even a room my daughter could keep. Gerald's face changed in stages. Confusion first, then a slow, sinking recognition. The kind that starts in the stomach and climbs to the throat. His lips parted slightly. No sound came out. I remember, he started. I'm sure you do, Maya said. She opened her folder. Let me walk you through what's happened since. She placed 9 documents on the table, one at a time. Each one was a deed. Each one bore the address of a building on Maple Street. Building 1, 438 Maple, purchased 14 months ago from tax lien auction. She set it down. The paper made a soft sound against the polished wood. Building 2, 422 Maple, acquired from the estate of Harold Denning. She set it down. Building 3, 416 Maple, bank foreclosure. Down. Building 4, 410 Maple. Down. Building 5, 404 Maple. Down. Building 6, 430 Maple. Down. 6 deeds in a row. Gerald watched each one land on the table the way a man watches cards being dealt in a game he's already lost. One by one. 9 deeds. 9 buildings. The entire block. Building 7 and 8, she said. I purchased from you last year, through Phil. You signed remotely. Gerald looked at Phil. Phil looked at the table. And buildings 7, 8, and 9, the 3 we're closing today, will complete the block. Maya aligned the final 3 documents in front of Gerald. Sign here, here, and here. The room was silent. The kind of silence that has weight. Gerald stared at the documents. His hand moved toward the pen on the table but stopped halfway. His fingers hovered over it like he was reaching for something hot. You bought my block, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a man hearing his own sentence read aloud. I bought your block, Maya said. Gerald picked up the pen. His hand shook, not dramatically, just enough that the tip of the pen wavered over the signature line like a needle on a gauge. He signed. 3 documents, 9 signatures, each one smaller than the last, as if his name was shrinking. When he finished, he set the pen down and leaned back. He didn't look at Maya. He looked at the windows, the river, the skyline, anywhere else. Maya gathered the documents and placed them back in her folder. Then she closed the folder and looked at Gerald directly. One more thing, she said. Gerald braced. His jaw tightened. He was waiting for the speech, the gloating, the revenge monologue he would have given if the roles were reversed. You have 30 days to move your personal belongings out of the management office at 412, Maya said. I won't be coming on Christmas Eve. She let the sentence land. Gerald understood it. The grace he'd never given her, the decency he didn't deserve. The fact that she was better than him, and they both knew it. And she didn't need to say it because the documents on the table said it louder than any words could. He stood. He buttoned his jacket. He picked up his monogrammed portfolio, the Italian leather one, and walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. He didn't turn around. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I was wrong. Maya didn't respond. He left. The door closed. The room settled. Maya sat alone at the long table. She opened her briefcase and took out the bread dough heart. Pale pink, cracked along one edge, almost weightless. She set it on the table next to 9 deeds and a business card with her name on it. She looked at it for a long time. Then she called Lily. Hey, baby. Mama's done. I'm coming home. Gerald moved out of the management office at 412 Maple Street on a Thursday in March. He carried 2 boxes to his car. Nobody helped him. Nobody watched. The block he'd owned for 20 years let him leave the way a building lets go of a tenant who stops paying, quietly, without ceremony, as if he'd never been there at all. Maya didn't attend. She didn't need to. She spent the next 4 months renovating Gerald's 3 buildings the same way she'd renovated every property she'd ever bought. Carefully, thoroughly, and with the people who would live there in mind. She replaced the wiring at 412, fixed the boiler, cleared the mold, installed new windows that actually opened. She repainted every hallway, put working locks on every door, hung fire extinguishers that weren't expired. She kept the rents affordable, not as a statement, as a policy. In April, she launched the Crawford Community Fund, a small program funded from her rental income. Families facing eviction could apply for emergency relocation assistance, first month's rent, a security deposit, and a referral to a job training network Maya had built through the contacts Eleanor had given her. Eleanor came to visit the block in May. She walked the sidewalk slowly, hands in her coat pockets, looking at each building. She didn't say much. She stopped in front of 412 and stood there for a while. "You know what I see?" Eleanor said. "What?" 9 buildings owned by a woman who was sleeping on a shelter cot 3 years ago. She paused. "And not a single one of them looks like revenge." Maya smiled. "That's because they're not." She meant it. She hadn't bought the block to punish Gerald. She'd bought it because someone had told her she couldn't, and because every family that moved into one of her units was a family that wouldn't stand on a sidewalk in the snow wondering where to go. Lily was 9 now, taller, quieter in some ways, louder in others. She'd started drawing, not coloring books anymore, but original sketches. Buildings mostly, floor plans, elevations. She'd sit in Maya's office after school, cross-legged on the floor, drawing structures that didn't exist yet. One afternoon, she looked up from her sketch pad. "Mama, can I have a desk?" Maya set up a small desk in the corner of her office. Lily taped the bread dough heart to the wall above it. The pink had faded almost to white. The crack along the edge had deepened, but it was still there, still holding together. Some things don't need to be perfect to matter. The neighborhood paper ran a second article. This time it wasn't small. "Woman evicted on Christmas Eve now owns entire block." The story made the local news, then the regional news. Then it showed up on social media and didn't stop. People shared it with captions like, "This is what they mean when they say bet on yourself," and "He told her she'd never own a thing. She bought everything he had." Maya didn't do interviews. She didn't post videos. She let the buildings speak. She let the tenants speak. She let the block, clean, maintained, affordable, alive, speak for itself. On Christmas Eve, 3 years and 12 months after the eviction, Maya hosted a holiday dinner in the first-floor common room at 412 Maple Street. The same building, the same address, different everything. 40 people came. Tenants, neighbors, Dawn and her kids, Eleanor, the retired plumber from the church who'd helped with the first renovation, the 2 guys from the crew who'd framed her second flip. Lily sat at the head of the table because Maya insisted. There was no speech, no toast, just food and noise and warmth, and people who showed up because they wanted to be there. Maya stood in the hallway outside the common room, leaning against the wall. She could hear Lily laughing inside. She looked up the stairwell, the same stairwell where Gerald had stood scrolling through his phone while she carried garbage bags past him. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel triumph. She felt something quieter than both. Something that doesn't have a name but lives in the space between where you were and where you are. Lily came out and stood beside her. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head against Maya's arm the way she used to on the shelter cot, back when she was small enough to curl up like a question mark. "You okay, Mama?" "Yeah, baby, I'm okay." They stood there for a moment. Then they went back inside and sat down together. What would you have said to Gerald in that conference room? Drop it in the comments. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.